Alright, hello guys. Welcome back to another video. Today we'll be teaching you how to get started with MongoDB in your Java project. So first things first, we're going to talk about what MongoDB is and why we're using MongoDB. So obviously MongoDB is a database, more formally a NoSQL database, meaning that its structure is very flexible, unlike the traditional SQL. And I'll get into that more later in the video. But it is also a very popular and easy to use database that offers many features. Um, so usually how these informations are uh, accounted for is something like JSON, and I'm sure you guys all know this. So this is what JSON looks like. Now, unfortunately, things get a little different in Java, and there's different syntaxes, but this is essentially this one. I'm gonna circle it again. Is essentially the essence of what goes into the database. So you can have things like employee, and then it stores a name. And then you can also store arrays in a database like items, and then there's an array of items, test data, quantity, things like that. Um, and the reason why databases are used is that they don't get reset. If you're trying to use data structures like arrays or hash maps, they get reset every time you rerun the application. But databases come in handy when you're making, say, bots for an application that needs to keep track of everyone's data. And if that resets every single time, then there's really no point of using having the bot there. So today we're going to basically teach you all you need to get started with MongoDB in your Java project. So let's head over to IntelliJ. Right now I have a project here. If you're using something other than IntelliJ, the syntax is going to be the same, except for probably this Gradle part. But if you're using IntelliJ, you can just follow along. So first things first, you should make a new project. One thing to note here is that I'm going to use Gradle. You could use Maven, but I'm going to use Gradle, and make sure that you're checking with Java. If you don't have the Java JDK, make sure to download that. But this video, we're going to be using Java. So we're going to hit next, and then you can just name whatever project you want, and then click finish. But I already have my project loaded here, so I'm just going to go back to that. So the most important and the first thing that we should do is we need to add the dependency into our Gradle. So right here, this is our Gradle. This is the dependencies. What the dependencies is for? It's kind of like a package JSON file in JavaScript. It's kind of like the dependency section there. Basically, what it does is you put your dependencies here, and then it'll add them to this external library. And what happens after that is you can refer to them in files in your Java files afterwards. So MongoDB is usually made for JavaScript, but they have a Java driver. And to include that in your project, I have it in a notepad here. It's this line. So you want to compile org.mongodb mongo java driver 2.12.3. This is the current version that I'll be running on. I think that's also the latest version. If there is a newer version, make sure that this gets switched to the newer version. But in terms of syntax, it shouldn't make much difference. So we're going to go ahead and copy this and then put it here. If you're on IntelliJ, you should get this little button here that prompts you to recompile. So we're going to click that. And then if you can see, we now have a Mongo Gradle in the external library section. It's right here. So if you see this, that means you have successfully included the dependency in your project. And if you were wondering what Maven Central is, basically you can switch this to JCenter, but these are all places where you can get packages. It's kind of like NPM in JavaScript, where you can get packages. But now I'm just gonna delete these two, I guess. We can get started from scratch. Okay, so what you should see is you have a source folder, and then in that source folder you should have a main. In that main, you should see this Java thing. You want to put I'm gonna put my files in this Java thing. You can put them somewhere else, but you just have to make sure they work. So I'm gonna put my file in the Java thing. So I'm gonna go ahead and right click Java and click new, and then go click Java class. And I'm gonna name this MongoDB. I don't know why I have this scanner thing in here, but let's just go ahead and delete that. Okay, so this is our very boilerplate class. Has this thing and then this thing. So let's go ahead and set up Mongo. So first things first, you obviously need a client to run on, and the syntax for that is a Mongo client. And I usually declare my, well, you technically don't need to, but I like to declare my clients, collections, and databases in as a static in the main file. That way you can refer to them in other classes simply by saying MongoDB dot whatever this name is. But anyways, so we have a Mongo client. I'm gonna call it Mongo client. And then we also need a DB, which is your database. And then we also need a collection, or a DB collection. I'll call it test. Okay, so this one is the client. DB creates a database inside of that Mongo client. And then a DB collection is a collection inside of the database. I know this is kind of confusing, but the main thing to keep track of is your collections. These things, once you finish setting them up, they will be just there. But in some cases, you might need more than one collection, or you might need multiple, so you need to keep track of your collections. So now in our main class, what we're going to do is we're going to get started with Mongo client. Mongo client will be equal to, this is just a very formal instantiation, but inside of here, we need a Mongo client URI. And this one is just going to be MongoDB : / local hosts 27017. So that's the URI you're going to be running it on. And there's a syntax error here because you need to you need to handle the unknown host exception, which actually is very common. Now what you need to do is you need to instantiate your database. So that's just a, new here, Mongo client dot get DB. I'm just gonna call it MongoDB tutorial. Okay, so You might be wondering why this isn't create DB, and that's because if your DB is not found in the existing client, then it will create a new one. So that's why you can just say get DB, and then this is the name of your database. So now we need to create our collection, and in today's video, I only use one collection. It'll be tests. So test will be equal to database dot get collection. Again, this will create a collection if there is one, or if there is one already, it'll use that one. So in this case, we don't have that collection, so this will create a new one, and I'll call it testing or test, and that'll be all. So this is just all the setup. There will be no manipulating here. And now let's head up to whiteboard and talk about a few things. I'll actually delete these because they're getting in the way. Okay, so you might notice here that this JSON thing doesn't seem like the syntax in Java. So right now I'm just gonna create a DB object and show you what it looks like without any additional tricks. So a DB object is basically what goes in the collection. I'm just gonna call it object right now. Whoops. So if you don't know any MongoDB syntax in Java, the very basic creation of a DB object will look like this. It's gonna create a new basic object, and then if we were, say, creating this JSON file, we're gonna have an employee called Bob, and then we're gonna append items, and then let's make a new int array, and then we'll append, if that's it, a table. So table, and then we'll call it table 5. So this is how you create a DB object just by itself. Yeah, it wants us to initialize it, but you get the idea. This is how you do a DB object by itself. Obviously, you don't want to do that for every single time that you want to create a new object. So of course, there is a better way to do it, and and the better way to do it actually needs Java classes, which I can guess you guys already know what it's going to be used for. So let's go ahead and create a new Java class. I'll name it test object. I don't know why the scanner thing is going here today, but I'll just delete it. Okay, so we have a test object. I'm gonna get rid of this main thing. So, and let's just add a very empty initializer. Okay. This is just mainly for looks, but it doesn't really need to happen. So today, this test object will have two things. So actually, let's make it 3 things. So first thing, I'll have a member ID. This test object will kind of act as a XP system in some kind of application. So first, let's just say there's a member ID, and we'll also have an integer timer to prevent spamming. I'll set that to 0 to begin with, but this isn't the important part. I'm just adding variables in to get something that looks like this. And then we'll also have a XP variable, and we'll initialize that to 0. So none of this is actually related, but it's needed for the demonstration. And here we're just gonna create our pretty normal one. Get member ID, right? Get XP. And the good thing about IntelliJ is that its autocomplete function is absolutely amazing. Get timer. It's set timer here. Get timer. There we go. And then that's it. So we also need, of course, a set timer. Set member ID. Yep. Set timer. Set XP. Okay, so that's all we need setting it up. You may realize that this may get tedious, but autocomplete always helps. So we have all the accessor methods as well as the modifier methods in this class. So now that we're finished setting this class up, let's head back to the main file for Mongo. So back to how to smartly create objects. As you may realize, we have get methods here that will return whatever we want. So what you might be thinking is, since a new basic object, right, we just create our name for that parameter, and then we put something here, and then we append something. What I'm trying to hint at is this can be, say, our test object, right, dot get member ID. So that's how you smartly create the thing. So let's actually do it. Usually, again, I put my method as a static in the main class that you're going to be using, so you can just refer to it like, say you're in this class, you can do something like MongoDB dot something dot because it's static, so you can basically use it anywhere. This will return a DB object, and I'll call it convert. It will take in a test object, and it will convert it into a DB object. And inside, it's very simple. You return a basic object. I'll say XP test object dot get XP dot append timer test object get timer dot append what else is left? Member ID test object dot get member ID, and you're done. That's how you smartly convert it, and every time you can just call this one. Now let's actually try something. So I'm going to make a test object is equal to new test object. So test object dot set ABC test object dot set timer. Let's just give it 1. Whoops. Test object dot set XP. I'll give it something like 1234. So now we're going to get into how you can insert certain items into the database. And it's very simple. It's just test that insert. You want to convert that to a DB object. So test that insert test object, and you're done. So I'm going to print out something. And the syntax will be a little weird, and I'll get into that in a second. Basic object. So actually, I'll get into it now. So say we want to recover what we have in a database. All we need is a query, which is also a DB object. But note this. DB objects can have 1 or 2 or 3. So our query, it depends on how specific you want to get. If you want to get all the people that currently has a timer of 1, then only put timer. If you want a timer of 1 and a specific member, well, in this case, you can just put the member ID because member IDs are all unique. But say they're not, then you can create these two. So in this case, we'll just take an easy example, XP, and we want the DB object in the database that has XP of 1,234. So that's going to be our query, and then we're also going to have a cursor. And cursor is going to take that database and find this query. Now note that cursor doesn't give you 1. If there is more than 1, it will give you more than 1. And if you only wanted to limit to the first one, you use cursor.1. And if you want to loop through multiple, I'll get into that very quickly in a second. So let's just run this and see how it goes. Now, as you can see, this is just some deprecation warning. But as you can see, I'll move this up. This has been made. So you can see right here, ABC, timer is 1, XP is 1,234. And there's something here. So this is very unique to MongoDB. It is a default ID. So yeah, it's just an ID. It's different. Everything, the ID is unique, and it's default created by MongoDB. So now, as you can see, we've put an object in. But what if we want to modify an object? So let's create a new test object here. Test object, new mod, equal to new test object. So obviously we need to create a new one because we're modifying it, right? So we can do new mod, and this time I only want to modify the XP. So everything else will be the same. I'll just copy this one here. New mod, new mod, new mod. And this time I'll make it 4,325. And I'll move this one up here to show you the difference. So this part is before it gets modified, and then I'll show you how to modify it right now. To modify, it's another very simple function. Get your date, you get your collection, you get a find and modify. As you can see here, there's find and remove, find and modify, find one. MongoDB is pretty amazing. So find and remove, you just need a query, as you can see here, and it'll remove the object. So I won't get into that because it's very self-explanatory. So we're going to use find and modify, and we're going to pass in our query. And then we're just going to convert the new object, which is new mod. So what this does is this will convert the existing query, which is this one, and it'll turn it into one with XP of 4,325. So we'll do same cursor, but this time it's equal to test find query again, and then we're just going to cursor.1. So I'll put a line show the difference here. We're just going to run it again, and as you can see here, this actually didn't get changed. Let's see what happened. Let's see. Oh, it's created a new one. Why don't we just print out cursor, and we'll just see a difference here. Oh yeah, I see why. It's because we changed our XP and our query is the old XP. So yeah, that's what happened here. Basically, cursor query. yeah, we are gonna have to make some new adjustments here. Okay. Well, why don't we get into how you can print out multiple? So I'm gonna comment these out because I do not want to add more objects. And part of the reason was because every time this gets run, it adds a new object. So we're going to comment out the section where you add more objects. And then what we're going to do is we're going to print out all of it. So cursor is very much like a scanner. So first it's just while it has next, and then db object next is equal to cursor.next. And then you can just print out. It's very simple. And it works like that. So let's just comment out these and see what it gives us. And then there's the one here. If we were to add another one, which we can do here, just do this one and then run it again. You should have 2 here. And the reason it's not having 2 is because this query is very specific. So now we can have 2. Yeah, okay. So this one includes the one that we put in twice, and then this one has the one that got modified. So basically what happened last time was that we put in 2 of these objects, and the cursor.1, this takes the first object that was put in that has the specified requirements met. So what that does is that it basically, because we had 2 and we modified a an object. So this modified object technically doesn't have 1, 2, 3, 4 anymore. So what it did here was just that it took this 1, 2, 3, 4 and it basically printed that one out, which was why it didn't get modified. But behind the scenes, it's just find and modify. And now say you want to remove. Well, it's basically what we just did, but test, find, and remove, and then put your query. And yeah, that's it. There's no db cursor. Well, there can be. And then we're just gonna print the count so you can see that it's getting removed. So this removes 1 by 1, by the way. So currently there's 5. If we run it again, there's still 5. Oh yeah, I didn't specify here. So XP, let's just go back to 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's remove the one with 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh yeah, I see what happened. Because I print the thing, basically it removed all of it, and then we should see it next time. But that's what happened. The find and remove nothing with nothing in the basic object parameter. It means find everything in that collection. So it found everything in that collection and basically removed it, and that's what happened. So now this is all that you need to get started with MongoDB in your Java application or project. It's really just the boilerplate, and then find and modify, insert, find and remove, and the main thing is this convert function. It's very important. You convert your Java classes into a DB object, which takes place in JSON form, and you can do it like that. So that's it for this tutorial on how to do Java along with MongoDB. If you like this video, then make sure to like it in YouTube and subscribe to my channel. Thanks.